Hi, everybody, to our new episode of the Cow Podcast. I'm Nicola.
I'm Gian.
I'm Donovan.
I'm Dr. Jermon Campbell.
Yeah, our lovely guest today.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
So, Dr. Campbell, do you want to talk a bit about what you do on campus?
Yeah, so I'm a member of the psychology department here at Shippensburg University. Been here for a while now, longer than I thought when I try and think back on it. I'm a social psychologist. I got my PhD in social psychology from Miami, Ohio. Most of my research deals with small group interaction in different settings. So I don't do therapy, counseling, clinical stuff. I do more of the applied research. So psychology of groups in the workplace. I study the psychology of social influence, like persuasion and marketing, and the psychology behind that.
Okay.
Psychology of sports fans. And then my other area that I tie into a lot of those as well is the psychology of technology, computers, and the internet.
Cool. And that's kind of going to be our topic today. So our topic for the day is how social media, online communication can really affect personal interaction. So our first question of the day is going to be, what are the pros and cons of social media?
There's a lot of each.
Right? Yeah.
There's a lot of each, for sure. In terms of the pros, I think the reason why it's so popular is because there are so many different applications out there, and they each do serve a different purpose, right? They satisfy a different need that we have. Like, for example, Instagram is great for self-promotion, right? So you see a lot more selfies and individual photographs taken on Instagram. And so with Instagram, we're trying to put like our best version of ourselves out there, which, it's, or the ideal version or the thing that we aspire to be, right? So I'm going to have the best shot of myself possible, the best clip. And we like that, right? I mean, you like being able to control how other people perceive you. Snapchat has its own uses as well. It's a little bit different because the reach is different, right? With Snapchat, you can control your audience more, right? You can limit it to, a close circle of friends. The messages, you can set so that they disappear, your chats disappear, the photographs disappear. So you don't have to be as intentional like you would with Instagram, right? Where you spend forever crafting that perfect pose. With Snapchat, it's quick, it's short, but it's a way to communicate, and there's not going to be any consequences from that, right? So we're a little more freer to be kind of our actual self, our true self. My genuine me comes out over Instagram because that's how my friends know me. My friends know the icky parts of me and the good parts of me, and I can share all that with them because I know there's not going to be any judgment and there's not going to be any consequences for that. Right? Mm-hmm. And I guess the other big thing about social media is it helps us connect with other people, right? Which is another need that we have. We want to bond. We want to connect with others. We want to maintain existing friendships, right? So when I was an undergrad, we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
And so a lot of friends that I had in high school and former teammates and acquaintances and things like that, like I just lost contact with because there was no mechanism other than writing, letters, and we had email, but it wasn't as easy. You had to go to a lab because not everyone had, computers, everywhere, and we didn't have phones. It was easy. So it just took a lot of work, and I lost a lot of friendships. I kind of wonder what if we would have stayed in touch? That would have been kind of cool. Yeah. So, social media helps us just to keep those friendships, even if they're not, our best friend anymore. At least I know, where you're at, what you're doing. Yeah. I can reach out if I'm in that city or town, and we can connect and things like that. So that's kind of a neat benefit of it as well. And then the other aspect is forming new friendships. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So new friendships, new relationships. If you talked about, like LinkedIn as a social media platform, that's for forming new connections, using the connections that I have to form new connections in my professional life. So there is a lot of utility, right? There's a lot of benefits in terms of social benefits, in terms of satisfying some of our needs with social media. That's the rosy picture of social media.
Yeah, coming back around to like the first point you made about like keeping connections. I know for me and Nicola, we both have a lot of family that's overseas, like in Germany. And so for us, it helps us to keep those connections with our family with apps. Like I know you use WhatsApp a lot.
Yes, yeah.
And I use it occasionally. My family more does like the Facebook Messenger stuff, but it's still all the same thing, just keeping in touch. And I think it's very helpful for that purpose.
Yeah, I agree. It's really nice that I'm able to like contact my parents, like my whole family 24/7. But at the same time, I'm wondering, how do you think has social media affected like the student-professor relationship?
Yeah, that can be kind of this dicey situation, right? Because without social media, you know, traditionally there's a divide between, you know, like your bosses, supervisors, and employees, or, you know, once you get into those status differences, so teachers and students, professors and students, so it can get a little uncomfortable at times, you know, because I think a lot of times students may not realize the reach of some of the things that they post online, and, you know, some of that information could end up, you know, affecting how professors think about you,
Definitely.
How they feel about you. You know, it is public information, right? So it's out there, and there's a chance that people could find it and could see it, and they're seeing parts of you that you may not want them to, want them to have access to. And if you only have limited contact with an individual, like I only see you in one class, any new piece of information is going to have a lot of weight in terms of what I think about you, right? Because I don't know a lot about you, but now I see this other thing in social media about you, and all of a sudden now it's completely changed my view or my opinion of you. Same thing with employers, right? I mean, social media is routinely checked, before people are hired for lots and lots of different types of jobs, even jobs you wouldn't even think, like, why would you even care?
Yeah.
But I've heard of job interviews where, you know, you get to the interviewed portion, you go in there and you do the standard face-to-face interview, and then they basically have you log into your social media accounts, and they scroll through it or download the whole thing with you sitting right there in front of them, right? And you can say no. Obviously, you can. I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, well,
It's a red flag.
yeah, then that's a red flag. What are you trying to hide? What don't you want me to see? So there are, you know, some consequences that come with oversharing or sharing different parts of yourself on social media as well that we just don't realize. And so, you know, I said, you know, when I was in undergrad, I kind of wished I could have had it to connect with but then I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm glad I didn't have it. Would I have this job right now had I, you know, been making decisions as a, you know, teenager, 20-year-old and posting all those decisions on social media for someone to find?
I think it's also interesting, like, you could even take it, like, one step further and say how things can get lost in context over things as simple as, like, emails.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel, you know, you get an email from a student that might not rub off in the right way? Like...
Yeah, that happens quite frequently.
Right?
Yeah, especially with different generations of users, because the way that, you know, Gen Z communicates is different than Gen X and, you know, boomers and things like that. So even, you know, within generations and things like that, there's going to be miscommunication. And it, again, like I said, if you only have a little bit of information to go on, that little piece of information has a larger impact on what you think. And so, yeah, you frequently do see miscommunications through email, through texts especially, because there isn't as much context. I can't see like your facial expressions. I can't see your body language if you're being sarcastic. You throw out an emoji, and I don't know what that means. What is this hands? Are you clapping at me? Are you praying?
Yes.
What are you doing? Even with things that are supposed to help us clarify, there's even some ambiguity there. So yeah, it happens. We got to be careful. You have to be crystal clear. You have to think about who's my audience. Who am I communicating with? What are their expectations? You know, face to face, we kind of do that automatically because we've done it all our lives. We're trained to, right? If you're talking to, you know, your boss or supervisor, your language changes, the tone of your voice changes, your body language changes compared to if you're talking with one of your friends. But when we're, typing out a text, we don't have those cues to go on. And so we just kind of do what we would normally do, but it comes out completely differently. So you gotta think about that audience.
That's actually really interesting. Like I think of like code switching, kind of like I feel like I rarely do that code switching through text. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I feel like I can really relate to that with like the meaning, because English is not my first language.
Okay.
So like half the time I'll already sit there like texting or emailing people, and I'm like, is this the right word to use? Like, is this appropriate or not? Like, how is the voice, like the tone of the message? Like, is it going to come off right? And then receiving texts and emails also, I'm like, was it intended to mean that? Or like, does it just sound harsh to me? Or is it written harsh? And like, so it's like really hard for me sometimes to read the tone of messages.
Yeah.
So.
I run into that problem with students a lot when I'm giving feedback, through D2L, through our online, content management system. And so I'm typing my feedback, and students will be like, ouch, that was harsh. Or like, why did you like anything about it? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just giving, just generic feedback, but I don't realize that if I was saying it in person, I would probably have a soft tone, or I would be, it's okay, and things like that, to make sure that the student realizes I'm not being too harsh. But there's really no way to do that over email, or there's no way to do that when I'm typing out feedback. And so, it's something I've become more sensitive to as students have, kind of come to me and be like, I'm sorry, this is horrible, I'll never do it again. I'm like, it wasn't that bad. Like, you got a B+. They're like, but you wrote so much negative. And it was, I'm like, no, that was just general feedback. I didn't mean for it to come off as negative, but it happens.
Yeah, it really does.
Well, I know before the show we were talking a little bit about your kids, and if you're comfortable with it, I was wondering if you'd be willing to share, like, if you have or if you had any rules with your kids and social media, because I know especially when you're younger, it can be shown to be pretty detrimental to a kid's social and mental health.
Yeah, we have had and have lots and lots of rules with our kids. Probably because my wife and I are both psychologists and I study this stuff, so our kids are oftentimes our guinea pigs and and bear the brunt of things that we've learned in class. So we might be a little more protective and things like that with our kids. Like we didn't allow them to have cell phones until I think they were almost in high school, whereas most of their friends had cell phones. 3rd grade, fourth grade, something like that. All their friends had them. They had iPads, big iPads, but they used them in the house, and we kind of controlled the screen time and the use and the apps that they downloaded and things like that. So we held them off as long as possible. And I think the only reason that we caved in terms of getting them cell phones was, one, they were just spending more and more time away from home at their friends' places and needed to contact us. And I think their friends' parents were getting tired of calling us and those types of things. And then with social media, when they started playing high school sports and travel sports, their coaches would set up, groups for the team. And so they were missing out on messages, and the coaches had to send them through us to get to them. And I was like, I don't care about practice, this and this and this and this. And so we kind of gradually started to introduce them into allowing them to have certain types of social media, heavily controlled, monitored by us. Most of them now have teen accounts that parents set up in conjunction with their teens. So Instagram has a teen account where you get to see not the messages that they're sharing, so no DMs or anything like that, but who they add. You can approve it. You get to see anytime someone adds or follows them as a friend. You can limit their time on the apps. Snapchat, same thing. They have a parental account as well that you can incorporate into that. And so, we did that with all of our kids, just to make sure that they understand you can't post anything, you can't say anything, you're not going to spend all day on the app. their limits and their guidelines. And I think we talked through, I think we might have had a contract that we made him sign, and it was, a little bit a while ago, but
professional.
Yeah, we have contracts for everything.
I like it.
We tried to be as cautious as possible, and we continue having these conversations with them as well. We try and make sure every time something new pops up and we ask them, we see kind of like TikTok trends and fads and things that might not be healthy or
like
somewhat
eating
dangerous.
Tide Pods and like all that.
What's the one?
The cinnamon challenge was.
No, I'm talking about like the choking thing, like trying to make yourself pass out.
I have seen that one. I have seen that one.
Where I guess a young kid recently died from that.
Are you serious?
I think he was like 13 or 14-year-old, and his mom found him in the bedroom, and he had been doing some like pass out challenge that was going around his school and going around TikTok. Yeah. It's nothing new. I mean, I remember the pass out challenge when I was in middle school, which was basically like literally people pushing on your chest so you can't breathe and you trying to hold your breath and then passing out. But I think with social media, it kind of spread so fast and so quick. Like it got really quickly stamped out in my middle school because it was like, a handful of kids that got suspended real quick and the parents brought in and then it was over.
And
right?
nobody else saw it.
Yeah. And it was done. And and it was kind of a rumor type thing by, 2 months later. Like, did that really happen or,
Yeah. Was there ever a case where you had to like interfere with your kids' accounts or?
I don't think so. Not really. I think they were kind of they really didn't know how much access we had, right? So we always told them, we kind of left it out there, like we have the ability, and we could always unlock their phones. Like they weren't allowed to change their. We had it set up so they their phones. We always had their codes, and we were like, we can see everything that you're doing. We have the ability, and so I think just having that knowledge, like we didn't really go into their phones and look and do all that stuff. Occasionally we would kind of just scroll messages and be like, all right, I'm just making sure everything's okay. But we didn't really do anything. But I think just the idea that we could do it was enough. Like if if what you say has the potential to be monitored, I think that's enough of a,
makes you act right.
Yeah, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to forward this picture. I'm not going to do those types of things. But and we've heard enough of their friends getting into trouble, and I think they're like, there are real consequences to this. So I think luckily we just didn't have any of those types of experiences.
Yeah, that's good then.
So to kind of flip this topic 360, I did a little bit of research and about some of you and your research, and I saw that you have been researching small group problem solving in both computer-mediated and face-to-face settings shown. So do you want to talk a little bit about that research?
Yeah, that was some older research we did where we were trying to get into some of the things like you were saying, like if you're using email or texting with a group and you're trying to come up with a solution to a problem, like what are some of those things we run into, right? We know in regular groups there's a ton of problems, right? Social loafing and just not using the information the right way and someone dominating the group and not having clear leadership. And we've come up with strategies to work through some of those. So we were looking at some of the ways that, just switching to technology. So with virtual groups, if you're trying to come to a solution, come to an agreement, solve a problem, what are some of the issues? And the idea was, why email and those types of things were created in the workplace is that they should help us do a better job when we're working together, right? It's so much faster. It's 24/7. We don't have to be at the same place at the same time. I can send you a message. You can reply to me. We can, so the potential is there to help us be better group members and teammates and make better decisions. And some of the early research wasn't finding that, right? And so we were trying to investigate why. And so one of the studies I did is I had people communicating through group chat. Half of them were in a room together, face-to-face in small groups, and the other half were online in group chats. And we gave them a mystery to solve. And we manipulated things like whether they thought there was a best solution or not, and we manipulated time. And we found out that the computer groups actually did better.
Really?
But
Okay.
yeah, only when you gave them unlimited time. so they weren't rushed. One of the problems is that talking online is slower, right? Sending emails back and forth or texting back and forth. Sometimes I get into that, someone I'm talking to, I'm like, oh, I should just call, because we would solve this in 30 seconds if we would just talk. So, online communication is a lot slower. So you have to give them more time, or at least the perception that they have as much time as they need. And then that they don't feel rushed and that pressure. And you have to tell them that there is an optimal solution, and they just have to figure out what it is. So if they think that there's a real right answer out there, and they have enough time, well, then, they start to see those benefits. You can go back and look at the log and, okay, what did this person say? And they were able to figure out the problem better than the face-to-face groups.
Interesting.
Yeah.
From, experience here as a student with, group projects and stuff, I always feel like a group gets more done when you're in person talking to people, because often here for students, I think once you move it to online and texting, it's often the risk that people just don't respond, or respond very short and don't really tell you what they're working on and stuff. So that's really interesting.
Too easy to procrastinate.
Yeah,
it is. There's so many other distractions too, right? Anytime you're on your computer or phone, you're doing work, but you're also doing 5 or 6 other things. So your sole focus and attention isn't on that. We didn't look at that, but we didn't even give them a choice. They were on a computer that nothing else, right? We controlled it, so they couldn't really get involved with anything else. But that being able to kind of focus and motivate, so you're not distracted by those other things. That can be tough.
I can kind of see how that'd work out too. Like if you're in a classroom setting and you're not paying it the most attention, and then you look up on the board and you can see where you were previously in the class, kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
So I think, if you break it down a little bit more, that does make sense. But from my experience, oh gosh, all that online work never works out.
No. You have to set up the right environment for it to be effective. You have to, I try and tell students this, when you're getting together, even in face-to-face right now, put everything away. Go to a place where there's no distractions, put your phones away, make sure that you can focus. And I think it's easier to do that, right? If we're in a room like this, we can put our phones away, we can turn off the screen, we can just sit here and, have our work in front of us. But with a computer, how do you do that? With your phone, how do you do that? How do you put everything away? How do you, do I delete the apps? Do I shut them, I shut them all off. I, put my phone on airplane mode. There's a lot of steps that you have to do to kind of set up that environment so that you can actually do work collectively online together.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so we'll take another 360. So we kind of talked about how you took you did your doctorate at Miami, Ohio, and I saw that you're involved in the university sport fan research group.
Yeah.
Shout out March Madness, right? But
shout out track and field,
right? Yeah, exactly.
World
Indoors going on right now. Do you kind of want to talk about that and how you got involved in that?
Yeah, I think I've always been a sports fan, and so I thought a lot about sports psychology, traditional sports psychology. But then I was like, do I really want to work with athletes? And I don't know. I was moving away from the counseling and therapy aspect of psychology into more research focus. And so luckily at Miami, I had a bunch of friends who were also in the program who were interested in sports as well. We kind of bonded over sports, and a couple of them had already done some research on sports fans. So instead of the athletes, looking at the fans and why fans are so passionate and why they get so upset, and why, the crushing defeat and those types of things, and why we spend so much money and go to games, and why, it's so important, and why it's a bonding area. And so we just kind of started, brainstorming ideas and piggybacking off each other's research and collaborating. So it was a big, collaborative. We formed, our own little group.
That's cool.
The Sports Fan Research Group. That was, and we did a lot of good work. We were pretty productive. And then I started bringing in some of the elements of, excuse me, losing my voice, talking too much. Started bringing in some of the elements from my background in technology. So we started looking at things like fan message boards and how they react, how some of the psychological processes on fan message boards mirror those in real world discussions. And I'm doing an actual study right now where we're looking at fans' attitudes towards transgender athletes online. We're kind of ramping up and getting ready to think about that, because you hear so much, in our society. It's becoming this politicized issue, and you heard the athlete's perspective, but you really don't know necessarily how fans would react if it's like someone on your favorite team, possibly one of your favorite players, and you find out that player is transgender.
Yeah.
Like, would that affect your support of the team, or would it impact you in any way at all? We did some similar research about 10 years ago when there was a lot of talk and discussion, same type, very politicized, about gay athletes in sports. And at that time when we did our research, there had never been in U.S. professional sports an out gay male athlete. It had never been that. Since then, we've had one or two. But we were wondering, we knew the athletes' perspectives and things like that, but we didn't know how fans would react. And it turns out that fans were very supportive. When we asked them to hypothetically think about an athlete on their team who was contributing and a performer and doing well, but there was this kind of media backlash about this player's sexuality or their suspected sexuality, how would that affect your thoughts about the team? How would that affect, your fan identity? And they were actually very supportive. They were, nope, wouldn't change my opinion as long as they're good, they're helping the team win. I don't care what they do. That's not my business. That's their personal life. I don't care about straight athletes' personal life. I don't care about gay athletes. Yeah. So the fans had a completely different reaction. And then some other researchers found some similar findings as well. So we're going to try and see where we're at in terms of transgender athletes here, and whether fans are still just as supportive, and it doesn't really matter as long as the person on the team is helping their team succeed. What that person's identity isn't necessarily a big thing. So we'll see.
What sports are you looking into for that?
Primarily looking at first women's sports, because that's been the biggest issue, right? So a trans woman. So we're currently looking for primarily college sports, popular sports for women, like soccer and basketball. We're looking at WNBA fan forums. I'm trying to remember if we're trying to track down any others. Those were the major ones we've identified so far. So we're looking at where we can post messages, and then we're going to have tell them a little bit about the study, and then post a link to our survey, and basically carry out a replication of the study we did a few years back.
Okay,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, where can people join studies like that? I think that's something pretty cool to kind of get involved in. Give our piece of a piece of our minds really, and what we think about sports.
Yeah, in psychology we have a subject pool. So we actually have software that we pay for, where students can log in and basically see a list of studies that are being run by members of the psychology department. So if you've ever taken general psychology, Psych 101, we use them a lot because we just have so many, general psychology students. Usually offer them extra credit for participating in studies, or it's a requirement of the course. Like when I teach it, they're required to participate in 3 studies. So throughout the semester, they just have to log in and see. And all the faculty members in psychology conduct research. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person. You have to show up and go to one of our labs. But you got to take a psych class if you want the opportunity. We usually restrict it to psych majors, which is somewhat of a bias. But we get the gen psych majors, and so they come from all different areas. And then when we're interested in specific groups, will go out and recruit through the internet resources. Amazon Mechanical Turk, MTurk, you can actually go out and get people who you actually pay them, not very much, but you pay them, for taking your studies. You can pay them depending on how long your study takes or, how much is required. You can pay them, 50 cents. You can pay them 75 cents. So each person gets paid for doing your study. Reddit has its own subject pool. I think it's called, I can't remember what it's called now. Something data, something about data or data gathering, data collection. So you can post links on there and collect, or you can go specifically to like groups we were targeting, like some of the women's sports fans, message boards and things like that.
All right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you guys wanted to move on to the Chat GPT one.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you want to take the lead with this, Donnie?
Hold on, I got to pull up the questions.
Yeah, we were just talking about ChatGPT in my psychocomputers class.
So
Really?
we talked earlier about like the pros of social media on conversation and communication, and so ChatGPT basically kind of said the same thing. So one of them was global connectivity, which is what me and Nicola were talking about. It's very important to us. Accessibility and convenience allows people to communicate anytime and anywhere, just kind of similar to what you said. Also, real-time interaction. So I guess like kind of relating it back to our world, like sports and stuff. Like I know a lot of people do that. There's a cool app that's called like the Real app now, and it has like real-time updates, and you can comment on each play that happens. So I think that's a pretty cool part of it.
Yeah.
Bringing sports fans together
in
real time.
And then another one was networking opportunity. I know you mentioned the LinkedIn stuff. I think it's overall I think did a pretty good job. Kind of similar things.
Yeah.
ChatGPT knows what's up most of the time.
Most of
the time. Yeah, we were talking in my psychocomputers class this week about some of the pros and cons of generative AI among students. So, I'm going to throw you all a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I was asking this of my class. What are your thoughts on using AI in the classroom or in support of your learning and work? We were talking about things like how common is it? What are some of the best uses?
Yeah.
What are the ethical uses?
I think if you use it too much, it can almost be a crutch. That's what I'm like. It's something to fall on, and you almost can't walk without it. Because, I found myself starting to use it a lot, and then when it comes to doing like my work on my own, it's like, how am I going to do this? I can't do this on my own.
You're not really learning anything.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I usually try to avoid it as much as possible because I'm just always really careful of like copyright and stuff, especially as a future journalist. That's like, I know that's a big issue.
Yeah.
And so like for classwork especially, I never use it unless like if it's required for a class or something, or like if you in class learn about it, then yes, I will use it obviously, but I will not go out of my way to use ChatGPT. So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it.
From my standpoint, I don't think I really use it to like cheat per se to like make it give me answers. It's more so just like an idea sparking like mechanism. Like if I have to write something, I'd be like, give me ideas on so and so, and then it can kind of get the gears moving a little bit, and then I go and write it on my own. But I don't know. I've just never been big into using it. I always thought it was important to actually learn the topic in the class that you're in. I mean, you're paying for it, so you might as well get the knowledge.
Yeah,
I thought you would have asked it to come up with some questions like, what should we ask a social psychologist about computers and technology?
I actually did.
That's what I would have did.
Right, but like as you said, like it helps spark ideas. So we might have started out with that, but then we kind of got a little deeper, and it kind of gives you a path to head down, and then all the different,
I think that's the beauty of it. If you can use it to help kind of supplement your learning, or give you some inspiration, or give you a different angle or different way of thinking about things, rather than, like you said, just using it for answers. Because then, what are you learning? I had a student in class say they loved it for learning language, because they could just take it and it would automatically translate everything. It would give them weight. And I was like, but are you learning? Like, it's doing the work. Are you really, it's kind of like you were saying, are you actually learning the language if ChatGPT is doing all the translation for you, right? You're getting the right answers, but there's something to be said for that process.
Yeah, I just think it's important to like responsibly use it when you use it. So, and like limit the usage, like we said.
Yeah. It's not going away, right? It's going to start being more integrated in an ebook I'm using this semester for the first time I saw gives students AI summaries, so you can highlight a paragraph, and if you're just not getting it, like I read it 3 times, I don't understand what this means, you can highlight it and click AI summary, and it gives you the AI kind of 2 sentence about what this means, which I was like, that's great, right? Again, I wouldn't use it for the entire reading necessarily, but if there are things you're struggling with, if there's, we teach, I use a lot of research papers, and so there might be a results section that has lots of advanced stats that the students haven't necessarily had yet. But yeah, if they just highlight that text, can you put this in, easily understood terms? They don't need to know what a, structural equation model is, but ChatGPT will explain what that means and give them the gist of it. So yeah, I think there's some value to it. We just have to have the conversations about how to use it effectively, how not, so it does become a crutch, like you were saying. But it's going to be something that's integral, even in journalism, right? I mean, it's definitely coming for sure. I'm sure with like Grammarly and everything, we use it already with our writing so much.
I think it's only really going to evolve from here too, which is kind of scary to think about too, like just how much, I mean, you already said you were talking about using it as a crutch, like think about 20 years from now, are people even going to be learning anything? Like, I know I see a bunch of these memes where it's like all these doctors who chat GPT their way through school trying to perform surgery on you, and they have like a YouTube tutorial up. It's just, I don't know that I can be, super confident in a lot of these professions.
Yeah, that is true.
They said the same thing about calculators, though, too. Like, you can't use those. You got to learn how to do it by hand. You're not learning anything. I mean, it's another tool, right? I mean, you got to use it in the right way. But yeah, that would be scary.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
All right.
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're...
All right. Well, that was our podcast on how social media can affect communication, and I want to thank you, Dr. Campbell, for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
You want to do like a little bonus segment and talk about the power moves that Coach Dunkel wanted to talk about? We can if you want.
We can do that. How much time do we have? We have time.
Yeah, you want to do a quick little riff on that?
Sure. Yeah, so one interesting area that's come out of social psychology recently, there's been some controversy surrounding this as well, has been the idea of power posing. And it stems from this theory of embodied cognition, which essentially means that our body sensations change and alter how we think. So one of the classic studies is, say we just met for the first time, and we're sitting here having a conversation, and we're both drinking like cans of soda. And we're drinking it, and then someone after our interaction asked me like how I felt about you. Because my hand is cold and chilly while I'm talking to you, I feel a little more that you're a little more colder.
Interesting.
Right? Compared to if we were sitting here and we were drinking like coffee. And we both had hot coffee and we're drinking and talking to each other, and then afterwards immediately someone asked me how I felt about you. I might feel a little warm. Yeah, he was kind of a nice person. He was more warm, right? Because of that body sensation, it actually changes. It starts priming thoughts associated with what my body is feeling, right? So that's the idea of embodied cognition. So the idea behind power posing is if you put your body in a powerful position, and so they call it like the superhero pose. You think of like a superhero with their hands on their hips and standing up and their chest out, or if you're a business person, like leaning back and like taking up lots of space, so like a very expansive body position. If you hold that position for a couple of minutes, you will start to feel more powerful and more confident, right? Because when our body's like that, we're kind of out in the open, we're exposed, and it starts to prime and trigger these thoughts associated with power and status. And so one of the classic studies, they had half of the students in the study have a high power pose, so do like the superhero pose for 2 minutes. The other half of the students in the study did a low power pose, which is very constrictive body, your hands are at your side, your eyes are down, and hold that pose for 2 minutes. Didn't tell them why they were doing it.
Okay.
And then sent them in for a mock job interview.
Mm-hmm.
So, your people in there, and they're going to put you through the ringer, going to assess you. And what they found was the people who were in the high power pose were rated much higher in terms of, their hireability. They were seen as better candidates because they came off more confident. They were more readily able to answer the questions compared to the people in the low power position.
That's cool.
So what the idea behind that is, or what the implications of that are that any time that you have to perform, anytime you have to do something that's stressful or causing you anxiety, anytime you're going to be judged or assessed, hold a high power pose for a couple of minutes. Go in the bathroom, go outside, just find a space where you can just kind of put yourself in that high power position, and then go do whatever it is you have to do. If I have to go, do a tryout or something, or, something like that, just having your body in that powerful position can prime your mind to feel more confident and powerful overall.
That's super cool.
I wonder if it has like similar effects, because I know people always talk about the effects of like positive self-talk for an athlete and how big that can be for your performance. I know I'm a little bit wishy-washy. Sometimes I can hype myself up. Other times I'm like, man, you suck. But it's like,
yeah, it's interesting. Oftentimes just telling yourself something can calm you down and things like that, but it's not necessarily enough. What social psychologists have found consistently, it's your behavior that's the most important.
okay,
Changing your body, changing your behavior has a stronger effect on how we feel than just trying to tell yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I can say I'm confident, I got this, you got this, you got this, but that's not as powerful as actually projecting that. If you project that, your body then starts to alter and change how you feel.
Yeah, I feel like when you tell yourself that, you still need to believe it. And, like, yes, you want to believe it, but, like, depending on how the situation is, it's just kind of hard to believe it.
Yeah.
But, like, being in a position, I guess, really helps with that because there's no question to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe we should try that at the next meet.
Think about it in class, too. I tell my students in class, a lot of times, if you want to enjoy your class more, if you want to be focused, and many times, if you're in class and you're just like kind of slumped down and you're kind of sitting like this, like your body is telling you that you're not enjoying this, that you're bored, that I'm tired, that because your body is that way. So your mind starts to be, I tell my students, just sit up in class, sit up straight and smile. And immediately you start to feel better. Like immediately you have a better sense of like, oh, this is a more positive experience for me. So I say anytime you're feeling down, just change your body language. Change it so that it reflects what you would be like if you were in a good mood. And oftentimes that changes your mood. It's,
small things.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did this.
Yeah.
We talked about this.
I'm here to help. I'm here to help.
All right, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
on that
Campbell.
note,
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.